My name is Stewart Wolpin. I'm a freelance reporter. I've been covering the consumer electronics, or now consumer technology space, for 3+ decades. This is my 40th something CES. I will introduce the panel in a second, but we're talking about digital wallet, and I'm coming at this as a consumer because I write for consumers. So I wanted to find out what we have here, or who we have here in the audience. I'd like to know how many of you are retailers, somebody who actually has them. Only a couple of hands. All right, let me ask you this question. How many of you have actually used your phone or a smartwatch to pay for something in a store? Well, there we go. How many of you do it more than once a week? Okay, we know who we're talking to. Now, it's interesting that that result is, I want to tell a little anecdote and then I'll let the panel introduce themselves. I play poker once a week, and after I got my Apple Watch, I was showing it off to one of the other geeks at the table, explaining the convenience of using it to pay. And the guy on my left, who is definitely not a geek, says, well, that's really exciting. And he could not be convinced that this was any easier than taking his wallet out and giving the guy cash. Could not be convinced. And as I've looked at this space, it seems to me that perhaps there isn't, the consumer take-up of this technology has not been, I think, what people have in our industry or people who are technologists would thought it would be. And so what we're going to discuss here are two aspects of that. The first aspect of that is whether or not it is more convenient and whether or not we can convince consumers, or you guys can convince consumers, that this is going to be more convenient. And two, whether or not consumers understand that there is a security benefit that somehow the industry is not communicating to them. So that's going to be the two primary topics that we're going to be talking about for the next half hour. I will now let each of the panelists introduce themselves, and I believe each one of them has a very, very, very short presentation. Oh, the clicker. Have a clicker.
Sure. Oh, cool. I'll stand up. Hi, guys. My name is Michael Dunworth. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Snapcard. What we are is we focus on allowing companies and consumers to use Bitcoin and the blockchain for more secure and much faster payments. We've got 3 core products in the space. Basically, sorry for the kind of advertising, I just want to give you guys some context. We've got our consumer wallet, which is where you guys as customers can go and pay businesses with your Bitcoins or with your local currency over the blockchain. We've also got our product for merchants and businesses, which is where businesses can start accepting Bitcoin or blockchain payments with the security of not being able to have chargebacks or fraud against them. And then we've got global payouts, which is international commerce. So I kind of went through everything, and I know we're kind of already running a bit after time, so I just thought I'd skip through everything. As a company, we were established about 12.5 months ago. We do over $500,000 per day in payments. We work with companies like Microsoft and other billion-dollar companies like UOL and Qualtrics. Thank you very much.
My name is Kanishk Parashar. I'm founder of Coin. And what Coin has done thus far is we've created a card-like device that holds all your card. And it's a little bit of a consumer hit. We've shipped about 250,000 of them to consumers. But as we've been going along, we have seen a bigger need for what we're building, because we're one of the few kind of small startup companies that kind of end-to-end understands cloud-based payments in the offline space. So what we're talking about today at this event, that we have announced a partnership with MasterCard, is that we have taken the heart of a coin, which is this NFC-based controller that does cloud-based payments, and we have made it extensible and usable by other companies. And the solution we're providing not only provides the wallet experience, all the applets and the EMB and everything together into one solution with security and certification all already taken care of. And this is the thing I want to present to you today.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Neeraj, Bhatia. I drive the mobile payment strategy at Qualcomm. For those of you who are not familiar with Qualcomm, we We sold about 1 billion mobile devices last year, so almost every phone that you guys are using most likely has technology from us. So what I wanted to focus on today is just give you key ideas on, how are we driving, what are we providing in terms of the building blocks for all the OEM pays that you see in the market that help deliver a very secure and an engaged experience. So from a security standpoint, turn it around. Thank you. Excellent, thank you. So in terms of security, I think, as Stewart pointed out, I think there's a big trend towards really passwordless, context-based authentication. We're at this stage in the market where really payment is seamless, but still people have to go log into their device. And what we're seeing in the market and the way we are taking technology forward is the mobile app or the financial institution or the retailer would always have a contextual score of who you are, which device you're on, and that helps them manage fraud, that helps them make the whole checkout experience a lot better. And in terms of the engagement in the retail environment itself, I think, I apologize for the formatting here, but what we're seeing is, a lot of people have seen engagement with BLE, with indoor location in retail stores, but we're now in sort of very close to commercial stages with some of the new technologies in the market, which we call Lumicast. And what this technology does, it allows a retailer to know whether the consumer is, where is the consumer in the store at a centimeter level. So if you are at the end cap, that's the right time, that's the right opportunity for the consumer to, for the retailer to send you the right coupon, to engage better with you. And I think this technology is also being used by national retailers to get a better understanding of the way people are going around in the store, do more analytics, and have a better engagement with the user.
My name is Matt Schulz, and I am Senior Industry Analyst at creditcards.com. And as you might guess by the title, we're a place where you go and get credit cards online. But we also, big part of our job is also helping people make smart decisions about getting credit and about using it. And with that, we do a lot of public polling and a lot of proprietary research. And that's kind of what I wanted to share with you all today. Before the first of the year, our parent company, Bankrate, did a survey where we asked people about their plans to use mobile payments during the holiday season. And what we found was, I think, will be very informative of what we're going to talk about here. And so the first question that we asked was, will you use mobile payments to make in-person purchases during the 2015 holiday season? And what we found was that only 14% of people said they would. And this is among people who said that they use their smartphone to shop. So this isn't the population as a whole. This is people who are doing this already anyway. So then, next question is, why won't you use them during the holiday shopping season? The second most popular question, it's not as convenient. That was the main reason that 31% of the people gave. Number one, maybe not that surprising, it's not secure enough. 36% of people gave that as the main reason why they weren't going to use mobile payments to shop during the holiday season. And that means they basically added up every other reason for not using mobile pay kind of pales in comparison to those two.
Okay, let's touch on that first bit on the convenience side, because that's what I perceive talking to consumers. That is the big issue. Why is this easier? Why is this easier than using cash or swiping my card? And I think there's two functions to this. One, is it easier for the consumer? And Is it easier for the retailer? And is there a breakdown at retail where the retailer is not communicating that we'd rather you do this and we will help you figure it out because it is more convenient?
I was just going to add a comment. I think, okay, it's really interesting because tap and pay, you know, like EMV and chips and stuff like that. In America, I moved to America like 2.5 years ago, and it hasn't been the norm. Like chip and pin, I think it just got implemented last year or something. And coming from Australia, it's been around for like 5 or 6 years. So now the adoption of like Apple Pay and stuff like that is much more common because people are used to not taking out their credit card and swiping anymore. They're used to just like smushing their wallet onto the terminal and basically just like the payment being accepted. So I feel like that habit is like a good barrier, like a good ease of entry into this kind of touch pay, which is a whole new habit, and creating a habit seems like pretty difficult for consumers.
Well, and from the retailer perspective, the transition to mobile payment has been an interesting one because it's been in tandem with the move toward EMV. And in some ways that's helped things because a lot of the new EMV terminals are also NFC compatible, so you kind of get both for killing a couple birds with one stone. But it's also created a lot of issues for retailers, whether it's expense, whether it's upgrading technology, training employees, that sort of thing. It's made it a real challenge for the retailers. And that's not even thinking about the consumer aspect of it.
Well, is there a cultural break between the U.S. and the rest of the world? I know in a lot of Asia and a lot of Europe, phones are much more of an in-your-hand experience. That people hold their phones in their hands instead of pocketing them. Is there a cultural convenience issue that the U.S. simply hasn't gotten that level to yet?
I think there is a geographical aspect here as well, because as you mentioned, Australia, and you look at those contactless economies, if you will. Australia, if you go to Europe, specifically look at London, you look at how people are using Apple Pay at TfL for going to the tube every day in the morning. I think it's a habit, as you said, right? And people use contactless for not just payments, but also for transit. And when they start using that, they clearly see a benefit. I think there's a lot of surveys done that people see benefit and convenience in contactless payments. I think there's another dimension to payments that we need to talk about is when people are buying stuff online, right? How are we making things easier for people to buy things online, either from a tablet or from within an app? And I think that's where the challenge is from either an enterprise app or a retail app or a financial institutions app is, you've got to make sure you authenticate the user. So the whole process of getting someone to enter a username and a password, right? Making that simple. And that's really where the whole single sign-on problem comes in. And once you've done the authentication, you have to have a way to continuously maintain that authentication with the user, so that in the end, just like with Uber, payments don't exist. But what if in the future authentication doesn't have to be a step that you have to go through? So if you can simplify authentication from the beginning, have a continuous context-based authentication, you can really simplify both online, in-app, and in-store payments together.
So I find it really funny that the survey says that it's not secure, the survey says that it's not convenient, and then here we're talking about habits. And that's really the thing. I'm in this space, I'm in the industry, so I go out on my way to use every type of payment I possibly can. And even then I forget, and afterwards I'm like, shoot, I missed an opportunity to see what all the products are like. And I think that long term, what we have to do as companies, in this space, is to help drive habit change. And somebody mentioned Uber. Uber is a good example of that because what they do is they verticalize it in a certain section, so you can get used to it for that. And now you wonder why you're paying for a taxi. And something like that in verticals over time can cause a change.
That's a great point that I wanted to make, that right now I think that we all look at mobile payments as a consumer as, well, that's a really interesting thing, maybe I'll try that. How do we get from, that's an interesting thing I want to try, to, I gotta do that? I think that there's a tipping point in there, and the question is, what is that tipping point? and who has to do what. Is it a financial institution? Is it a retail situation? Is there a combination of things where the retailer somehow has to be either convinced or also, I gotta have one of those, in that frame of mind, so it goes from interesting to Uber?
I was just going to comment, is there, like, again, like, it comes down to also, like, device penetration as well. Like, not everyone has an iPhone 6 or 6 Plus or an Apple Watch that can participate in Apple Pay.
What?
Yeah, exactly. What, you got one on? Yeah, he's got an Apple Watch on. How many times have you used it?
Dwayne Reed, they accept it in New York, so
Right.
whenever I'm in Dwayne Reed, I always get a look
Exactly.
from the cashier.
So it's not accepted everywhere. Like, not everyone participates in it yet. But, you know, Samsung Pay, I think Android and Samsung bringing out those components, like their version of Apple Pay, is awesome because they've got such a higher penetration rate as far as devices. So if everyone can start using them, I think that's going to be helpful to maybe
How do we
changing
do
habit.
that?
Well, I think just actually because it's now capable to everyone. Because right now, someone with an Apple Watch, an iPhone 6 or an iPhone 6 Plus, or 6S and up, basically, they can use it. But that is such a minority as far as Apple devices go.
Well, you know, everyone always, forgive me for jumping in here. No, so everyone always talks about retailer acceptance, but you're right. You know, there's also a lack of devices that actually transact, you know, and you know, there's a good reason why like major, giant, beautifully huge companies are the only ones with this functionality because it's complicated, you know, it takes a very long time. You have to have a lot of players agree, you know, before it goes out of the door, you know. So I believe the innovation will spur, and everyone, you know, in this room, likely in 16, maybe 17, will have access doing digital payments like at a price point that you care to pay for, you know, and that's going to make a really big difference in usage.
I think a lot of it is about user experience. I mean, it has to be acceptable everywhere, but I think a lot of it is about user experience and making it really quick, really easy. But I think also there may be the next step that's necessary in integrating loyalty and that sort of thing to give people that extra incentive. Because if you're talking about just replacing a credit card, it's one thing. But if you're talking about replacing credit card, loyalty card, that sort of thing, then you're really making it convenient. And then that's really where the jumping off point might be. And I've heard a lot of talk about that in other places at this show.
Okay, well, let's talk about security, the number one reason. And I think that I have encountered that also, and I happen to know that the whole token, you know, is actually safer. The question is, why doesn't the consumer understand that using the phone or using the watch to pay for something is more secure than sliding their credit card? What aren't we doing to tell them that? Because that could be the tipping point. If they know that their payments aren't going to be hacked, that the guy behind the counter isn't, you know, carbon copying, God, how old am I? Carbon copying their credit card, wouldn't that be the tipping point if suddenly go, oh, it's safer, I'm in?
Yeah, I think, so one thing I always like to say about security is if the security is visible to the consumer, then it's not done right. So if you tell me I have to go educate the consumer about security and why it's more secure, then we're already doing something wrong. So fundamentally, the security has to happen in the back, just in the background, and in the U.S., especially given the liability structure, I think yeah, if there's a fraudulent transaction, you call your bank, and either the retailer or the bank will take care of it, right? So that's kind of one of the reasons why, you know, selling security to a consumer. One, first of all, they shouldn't know about it. They shouldn't care. And second, the economics isn't there for the consumer to worry about it.
Yeah, I know, like Bitcoin payments, like that's actually like the number one thing is Bitcoin. Is anyone here familiar with Bitcoin? Like, put your hand up if you've got Bitcoin or you've heard of Bitcoin. Okay, so basically, that's good. Basically, everyone's drinking the Kool-Aid. No, I'm joking. But basically, Bitcoin is digital cash, and cash is the most secure payment I can ever give because there's no matter what happens, they don't get access to my bank account or anything like that. And Bitcoin has this same component. So we saw actually a really big adoption after I think it was Target, where a ton of people got hacked, and then people were like, well, hang on, every time I swipe my card, I'm giving someone the keys to my city. And yes, I can charge back and do all that kind of stuff. But we, just like as a sort of added note, we noticed like a lot of people started becoming more interested in Bitcoin around that time, because if I make a payment for $100, it's not me saying, hey, you've got my credit card details, debit me later if you kind of feel like you need more money. It's, you can only take what I'm giving you, the end. So I think that was kind of interesting.
And people generally, because of Target and Home Depot and Michaels and those data breaches, people are nervous about the security of their plastic cards, period. Then when you add in the fact that around the launch of Apple Pay, which is still probably the best known, has sucked up the most oxygen in terms of mobile payments, you had the whole photo hacking scandal with all the nude photos getting out and all that sort of thing surrounding your mobile phone, and you add it all up and there's just a lot of headwinds. And I think that eventually people will understand that it is more secure, but I think it's going to take a while.
Why will it take a while? What is missing in either the process from the financial institutions or credit card companies, issuers, or from the technology side, from the Apple, or I mean Apple and Samsung Pay have both talked about the fact that there's this tokenization going on. What are we missing as an industry that 36% of consumers are totally missing?
I think a lot of it's just time, and getting to know people who have used these things more. And I think that eventually, I think that number will tick down as more and more people use it and get exposed to it. But it's just going to take people using it, I think.
You have to cut out.
Is it new?
I wanted to leave a little time to get questions from the audience. So is there somebody with a mic? I can't see. Are there mic? How does this work? Do mics get passed around for questions? Okay. We have a question back here from the guy standing up. Please identify yourself, and are you asking the question or do you have the mic?
I don't have a mic and I don't need a mic.
There you go.
Bang.
And your name is Mike. No, I guess not.
That'd be nice.
So my name is Carl Weaver, and I am the person who enabled NFC into all these smartphones in Taiwan and China. I also am involved in embedded localized security, something called the Trust and Execution Environment. And actually, the answer to your question about these technologies is they come from Europeans, so when Americans don't know about NFC, we think it means National Football Club. Okay? That's a fact. The fact of the matter is, technologies have been around in Europe, and they went to Asia to scale to get them onto smartphones. So the fact is, you hit the answer. It's time. It's nothing but a time issue, and the fear factor is reasonable things. But my question is really around security. That's my question. Which is the better security? Is it the SIM card or the embedded secure element from NXP earlier this morning, or is it this new technology which is embedded into the mobile applications processing chip? Because that's what's used for host card emulation in CES. So what's the better security? We have security on the smartphone. What is the better security on smartphones? Because we're beyond NFC. What is it? It's on every damn smartphone. Okay, and this other technology is already on all the smartphones. So which is the better security on a smartphone? Because we're talking about security.
Okay. You guys all heard that?
Yeah, so I think there's never a clear answer around better security. I think security is a very layered strategy approach. So you can start with something like a secure element at the lowest level, but that's just tamper resistance on the device. But the way things are moving forward is really more about securing the device but providing a really good device identity. The device identity is driven by the quality of the root of trust on the device. But then looking at the user, for user authentication, you can authenticate the user from various sensors on the device. So fingerprints are very common in all the premium tier phones in the market today. What we see a lot in the mid-tier phone segment is use of iris and facial recognition, because those technologies are slightly cheaper. Now, use of the trusted execution environment, which is essentially, for those people that are not aware of that, is basically a software execution environment on the application processor, but not in the secure element. It gives another area of secure storage. And if you have a very strong backend risk engine that's doing continuous authentication, or you have other vectors, you're doing other AML or OFAC, or any kind of other identity or security checks on the user, then you can store the credential or a token in a trusted execution environment as well, and you can have limited use keys for that token and have essentially the same user experience with a similar liability profile. So I would think the answer to your question is really, it's a layered approach. It varies by geography, based on compliance, based on regulatory requirements, and it's really up to the issuer to decide what they're most comfortable with for the type of the transaction.
Okay, any other questions? Young lady right here.
Hi. I was glad you covered Bitcoin part because up till then, they only focused on G8-based country. And I just wonder, since you said you have to create the habit, and most of developing countries, like India or African continent, they try to accept mobile itself. And also, Facebook tried to integrate payment system in the chat services. So I just wonder how those systems can be saved for the developing countries who doesn't even have a bank account or credit card.
I was just going to say, we develop a lot of emerging markets. Developing countries, emerging markets. Bitcoin's actually, that's where Bitcoin's got such a cool opportunity because they don't need a bank account. They don't need to go through all these, bits of paperwork. Creating a Bitcoin wallet is kind of like creating a Gmail account. You've got a username and password essentially. And so that on-ramp is so cool because now those people in these emerging markets have this financial inclusion, and it is with a secure payment method because if they pay someone that they can't, they're not giving access to their account from where I'm paying Africa to the US. I'm not doing that. I'm giving that person the money. So from a security standpoint, I think it's like Bitcoin, if that was the starting habit, if that was the norm, like as digital cash, I think that would be a really cool, I wish it kind of started that way instead of credit cards, obviously, but.
Just to add to that, I think the whole underbanked and unbanked market, a lot of people may not have bank accounts, but they do have a phone. And when they have a phone, they have an identity and a relationship with the operator. And once that happens, you can get the money flow going. And you can look at M-Pesa, and there are a lot of other services with the operators that have already covered this market.
Okay, I think that's all the time that we have. Sorry, these guys will be here, so if you want to hector them after we're done here, I'm sure they'll love to be hectored. And I will leave you now to have lunch. Thank you.